Good afternoon. I am Lyndon Wilson, and I am the coach. For some of you that don't know, I did coach high school football for 14 years. I've been coaching entrepreneurs on and off for 18 years. And so we want to start a show called Game Day with Coach Wilson. My guests today are Brian Dobbs and Jim Thomas, both coaches in their own right. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here with me today on Game Day with Coach Wilson. Before I introduce each one of you, I want, again, we're going to talk today about roadblocks and setbacks. And I think this is a very appropriate time. Being that today is tax day, that may be an additional roadblock or setback for some of us. Hopefully not. Anyway, I'm going to start with Jim Thomas first. Jim Thomas and I have known each other for an extremely long period of time. Not to age either one of us, but Jim, I consider one of my first professional mentors, and he has been a part of my professional life since the first day that we met. Jim, welcome to the show today. Tell everybody a little bit about you and fitness management and consulting.
You bet. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Thomas. Company is Fitness Management and Consulting, and we're in the gym industry, the fitness industry, and we provide, business development services, consulting services, sales training services, new startups, turnarounds in the industry. And in addition to that, we do have a buy-sell brokerage division, all serving the gym industry and doing it nationwide.
All right. Brian Dobbs is another great friend of mine. Brian is a business coach. He's also a real estate agent. He's got a show, Redefining Real Estate, on The Difference. And happy to have him today. Brian, please introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you.
Thanks, Lyndon. I'm Brian Dobbs. I'm a real estate agent. Absolutely love what I do. I love the industry. I love the people that we are able to serve and help. So one of the things that sets us apart and makes us different in the real estate industry is because we're educationally centric. We make it our aim to educate the buyers and educate the sellers, not just on a typical buy-sell transaction, but what to do, setting the real estate goals, setting your timeline goals, and looking at the process a little bit different, just out of a new lens. And with my real estate coaching for the last 12 years, coaching real estate agents, we've been able to truly take a nice, fresh approach to home buying, home selling, investing, leasing, the whole 9 yards, which is exciting that we can go and help families get better and stronger, build stronger neighborhoods and stronger communities. And I appreciate you being on the show today.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. I asked Jim yesterday. I said, "What's a good topic for us?" And Jim, you mentioned roadblocks and setbacks, and I think it's as I said before, I think it's a great time to be talking about that, especially with COVID potentially going into a second round of maybe some slowdown or something like that. But Jim, start us off and just talk a little bit. Brian and I were laughing earlier. We have no experience with setbacks or roadblocks. Everything's always been perfect for us. And so I'm not sure we've got a lot to talk about. Actually, I've had plenty. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that for a small business owner, I've said this before, I think mindset is important because you're going to have setbacks and roadblocks. And if you're not mentally prepared for that, the struggles just become tenfold. So it seems sometimes. But Jim, talk a little bit about roadblocks and setbacks. Get us started on that.
Yeah, a lot in there, right? And let me tell you kind of where I come, thinking about, roadblocks and setbacks is for folks that do it. Here's one of the things that I see is a lot of business owners, operators, or even, independent salespeople in that is they'll set some really good goals, for the month. And hey, here's what I want to do. And then they'll prepare, here's my plan. Here's how we're going to do this. And then, as we all know, success is not a straight line. It's a great big squiggly line that grows all over the place. And what happens, we got the great goals, we've got the great plan. and now something happened. Uh-oh, we didn't get this big sale we thought we were going to get, or oh no, we got shut down again, as has happened in other states, right? And so we've got a roadblock and setback. And what I see happen so frequently is there's generally two things that happen to people. Is A, it'll stop us in our tracks. We get this roadblock, we get this setback, it stops us in our track, and we simply say, oh man, I was doing so well, I guess I'm not going to hit those numbers. Or maybe it pushes us off in a different direction, and maybe we decide to kind of lower some of our expectations. And so what we started to do with our clients is we said, okay, we're going to do the goal, we're going to do the plan, but now let's have a category for roadblocks and setbacks. Let's prepare for this. So if it happens, we hope it doesn't, but if it happens, we're ready. And so we'll start to identify, 2, 3, 4 things. What are some potential roadblocks? And depending on where folks are, across the country, maybe it's hurricane season, maybe it's loss of key personnel, maybe I lose my voice, okay, and can't talk, maybe it's COVID, okay, and maybe we do get shut down, or maybe we have to go digital. Okay, these are all things that can happen. And now let's write out, what is that plan if that happens? Because the more we start to do this, we write it down, we plan for it, it's going to give us a sense of control over these outcomes. Because what I don't want to do, okay, as someone who's a business consultant, what I don't want to do, with the person that I'm working with, let's don't make having success optional. We're going to hit these numbers, even if it requires a higher level of action. But just because there's roadblocks and setbacks, and one of the I'll kind of close this with kind of two things here. One of my favorite sayings about anyone who's in business: the people who are best at it, they're great at Plan B, because you're going to need a Plan B. And that's what your roadblocks and setbacks is. And then the thing that maybe I would put kind of at the top of this is choose to be responsible. Hey, I'm responsible for getting these results. I'm not holding COVID accountable. I'm not holding hurricane season accountable. I'm holding me accountable. And so we're going to have roadblocks. Now, what's the plan when that happens? So kind of in a nutshell, that's kind of how we try to look at that.
All right. Brian, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm actually going to segue on that, Jim, because you really just hit the nail on the head. So when you go through your planning, I see planning 1, 2, and 3, possible outcomes, possible roadblock setbacks, and where we are finite, there are a plethora of items, situations, circumstances that we just are not going to be able to know every single thing that's coming at us. But and I love the fact that you said that we plan for those, and you write out 1, 2, or 3, or 4, however many that you guys can think of. But it's that question that person has. Well, what if it was a 5 or 6 or 7 that was a curveball? And my response would be, it is the process that you went through to map out plans 1, 2, and 3 that will set you up for success if 4, 5, or 6 happened. When you can be able to rationalize and think and choose to be responsible, I think that's number one. Number two, where I would add to that, Jim, is choose to be creative. Have that ingenuity in you that regardless of what happens, and if it looks like it or doesn't look like what I planned for, I'm going to take my whiteboards in my office, and I'm really good at erasing them and drawing out a new plan or a work around this situation or roadblock or setback that I can take this to the next level. So that responsibility is important. I think creativity is really important as well, is that we tap into that creativity inside of us because we have it, that we're unique and we're able to see things different, get around people that can also see different, and use that to catapult you through that hurdle.
Let me ask you guys a couple questions. The business coaching program that I have is called Adapt, and that was intentional because I think that in coaching, one of the things that in order to overcome setbacks and roadblocks, you've got to be able to adapt. You've got, as Jim said, and you, Brian, you got to prepare for plan B, and the people that do that the most effectively typically are going to be the most successful. Do you guys, in your years of experience, do you believe that a person can train to be adaptable and to be creative and to think on the fly, and sometimes maybe I've used the, tie your shoes while you're trying to run. Is that possible? Jim,
I
I'll go with
believe
you
so.
first.
Who's first, Lyndon?
Oh, go ahead.
Let Jim go first.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it absolutely is, and part of this, I think, is how we communicate this to somebody else. Use the word adapt. The way I try to explain this to folks is, let's learn to play the hand we're dealt. Okay, so we're dealt a hand that maybe it's not super favorable. Okay, let's learn how to play it. And the example I give to folks, I say, hey, have you ever sat at a poker table before, and maybe you came up with, you kind of won the hand, and all you had was a pair of deuces? Well, you played the hand you were dealt. And so I'll try to come up with scenarios where people have done this anyway. They've done it kind of naturally a little bit. And so let's play the hand we're dealt. Okay, we're dealt this. Now, how do we play this? And I would even tag off to what you were talking about on being creative is absolutely, we want to be, we want to have a high level of innovation here. With these folks, let's think our way through this. But play the hand we're dealt, and what are the solutions here? Because a lot of times we can go back and we can look at prior successes that we've had. I mean, I'll get people in a round table and, okay, let's go through. Give me a situation that didn't really happen the way you thought it would. How'd you handle it? And most people have dealt with it. Most people have handled it. We need to kind of bring that back to the forefront of their thinking, and let's play the hand we're dealt.
What do you think about that, Brian?
I think when life situations happen, which they do, whether you're going to categorize it or define it as a roadblock or setback or whatever it is, one of the things that I've looked at in my life, and my wife and I talk about this quite a bit as well, is you have a situation and it flusters you and it gets you all worked up and you are derailed for days because it has consumed your thought process, your focus, then it's created an inability to focus. Then it's created anxiety and pressure and stress. And then you get through that storm and then you if you did learn from it, you go through a similar storm or another storm and how you react and respond, you're just like, okay, so my recovery. So if I've learned from this and I keep that open mind to continue to learn how to play my hand, continue to learn how to process this, then my recovery time, my rebound time is not 4 weeks on the sideline. Now it's only a week. And then I go through it again and it's not a week. It's actually just a couple of days. And then I go through it again. And it's not a couple of days. Now it's just a couple of hours. And I'm able to basically tap into the strength of my past experiences through the storms I've been through and create the willpower, the tenacity, the stick-to-itiveness to say, you know what, this is the deal. The struggle is real. I absolutely agree with it, but I'm going to press through this and not respond like I did in the past, but be able to react in a proactive way, creating a process, creating the plan, trusting in the process, knowing that this storm is not going to last. This storm was sent in and it will pass, and I'm going to come out on the other side and I'm going to be a lot stronger. So when I look at this, Jim and Lyndon, I see a really positive thing is when we go through those times, how quick did you recover? The recovery time is really cool to me because I didn't have to struggle with it. It didn't derail me for, again, 2 weeks. It was something that, wow, that stung. Okay, let's get up and let's go forward.
Okay. Let me ask this. Excuse me. Can you be an effective leader without being adaptable and without being good at Plan B?
I think it'd be extremely difficult. I think the ability to think quickly on your feet is one of the core ingredients of an effective leader.
Brian?
I agree. I think you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to uh, have the decisiveness, but also be that visionary and understand, uh, what lies ahead and possible situations or circumstances or scenarios that could happen that you could lead effectively.
Well, okay. So would that mean then, consequently, that in order to be a good leader, you've got to be adaptable. You've got to be able to think on your feet and be good at Plan B. Does that mean then there's value in being able to do that? And do we prepare enough to for the unexpected?
Oh, I think most people do not. From where I sit, most people absolutely do not. I think what I see it a lot right now. I mean, my client base, we're out in Arizona, we're out in California, and we're dealing with a lot of this. And not only do people not really plan for it, it's almost like if they're not careful, they kind of get into victim mode, and they're going to go in the whole other direction all of a sudden. And so I think that's one of the great challenges for many folks. Too many people, when they're kind of doing we'll call it business planning, if you like, but they're doing that planning, and here's how we're going to handle all this. They almost plan for it like everything's going to click perfectly, and it just never will. There's always going to be a hiccup. And I'll use the example of just kind of basic sales training with folks. Is, of course, that big fear and big problem that folks have with it is, having to ask for the sale ultimately is that big challenge. And that's the roadblock and setback, right? And so part of this is
Right.
we want to prepare them in advance that, hey, this is going to happen. It's normal. Go ahead and expect it. And here's an easy solution for you. And so we try to break it down into its kind of simplest component. But do I think people plan for it? I think most do not. Now, your real high achievers, I think they are, but that's why they're a real high achiever. And that's what we're trying to help other people become.
Does that being able to plan and prepare and being really skilled at addressing roadblocks and setbacks, is that just learned from experience of not getting it right? Kind of like what Brian was saying, you go through one time, two times, three times, you start to figure this out. Or is that something that can be taught? I mean, is it a learned skill, or is it something innate?
I mean, I think it's learned. I think you have to do it. I find that many businesses that struggle, because part of my business is handling turnarounds and businesses that are troubled. And one of the single common denominators for those kind of companies, it's an absolute failure to plan. And they're really not planning. They're simply, they become a victim of circumstance, and it's almost like they're swatting away the enemy every single day instead of going in there with a concise plan of here's how we want to do it. If it doesn't go exactly like we want, here's what that pivot is going to be like. And if you can be consistent with it, too many folks when they do this, they'll do it maybe they'll start doing it for a month or two, and then all of a sudden, well, I've got this figured out. I don't have to keep doing it. But the idea is to have that discipline month in, month out. And I think absolutely you can. 'Cause I do think most people have done it. They just didn't realize they were doing it. And so when they have to really think about it, that's when it becomes a problem.
Okay. Going back, as I mentioned before, and coaching high school football for 14 years, one of the things, and this is something that I learned when I got into coaching. I played football my whole life. I played on many levels, but you're not always privy to what the coaches are doing and how they're preparing. And so as I got into coaching, I started realizing how much that goes into it. You go into it and you watch your opponent, and you watch their game film, 2 to 3 games previous before you, and you start to pick up on their tendencies, and you see where their strengths are, and you see where their weaknesses are, and you develop your game plan. And I always knew that. I always knew that as a player. What I did not know is that as a coach, you you create your game plan based on what you're seeing, but then you create another one based on how they're going to respond to what you're doing to them. And so you are going into a game with a plan A, B, C, and sometimes even more. And there was times in my coaching that we went through A, B, C, D, and we're having to come up with another one on the sideline. And I think that in businesses, number one, you got to have realistic expectations. You got to know that something's going to go wrong. Typically, in anything that we do, it may be minor, and you may not see that. It may not have a big impact. But I'm not certain that I've ever had anything go perfect for me. There's so much that goes on. Brian, let's talk about realistic expectations as far as preparing yourself for setbacks so that you're not disappointed, so that you're
Right.
not poor, pitiful me. It stops the victim mentality, does it not?
Right. And we don't want to go in there with a victim mentality, and we don't plan and prepare for setbacks and roadblocks based off a fear or anxiety motivated behavior, because that's equally as erroneous. So when we're planning for these things, what we want to do is basically mitigate loss. We want to leverage ourselves to create the very best results that we possibly can get in this situation or circumstance. One thing that I have found is the 5 top people I hang around with the most is really critical. And I know that we in real estate, we work off at SOI, which is your sphere of influence. But when I look at a COI, which I redefine that to circle of influence, who are the top 5 people I'm hanging around with the most? Are they positive? Are they optimistic? Are they innovative? Are they creative? Are they going to come back to me and say, hey, listen, you know what, let's go to a whiteboard together and let's map this thing out. I think that's number one, what I look at. And number two, what are the things that I'm listening to? And, learning, am I trying to grow? Am I trying to look at things at a different lens? Or do I have a fear base inside of me that is being revealed that I need to remove? I just spoke with a friend of mine in the same industry that I am. And I said, well, the reason you're doing this is because you have an element of fear in it, and so it's not going to work. You have to be all in. You have to believe in the process and believe in the plan. And when things don't work out, guess what? We're going to revert to plan B, and then plan B might not work. So we might have to go to plan E or F or G. But I think to have the ability to stick with it until it works, until you find a workable solution, I think that's another component that you need to have in it.
How important then, in what both of you are saying, is having someone in your corner, like you, Jim, like you, Brian, that when there are roadblocks and setbacks, you've got someone to reach out to just in case you might have not prepared or may not have the skills for that particular roadblock and setback. How important would you say that having those 5 people, 3 people in your circle, a business coach, advisor, how important is that, Jim?
It's absolute. You have to have it. One of the biggest problems, because when we start going through, training on this kind of thing, we start talking about, hey, what's going to have to change here? And more often than not, I may have mentioned this in previous conversations that we've had, what's going to have to change here? And sometimes what has to change is the people that we're hanging around, people that we see every day. Because if they're telling you at any level you can't do it, or if they're supporting and enabling any kind of a victim behavior, you need to run, and you need to run as fast as you possibly can away from those folks, because you need to be around people that are, I'll call them high achievers. I'm not talking they have to be building big skyscraper high achievers, but folks that, are achieving and that have that positive expectancy to win. If you're not associating with that kind of person, I don't really care who you are. If you're hanging around someone who's not doing that, it's going to be tough.
Well, we talked earlier also about learning how to overcome setbacks and roadblocks, but having the right people around you that have some some hard experiences. A lot of times, and I know Jim, when I worked with you before, one of the things that I really appreciated about that relationship was the fact that you had seen so much through other clubs, not necessarily my competitors, but just your interaction throughout the industry gave me access to things that I may not have experienced. And so when a challenge first would hit me, that's when I'd get on the phone to you and I'm like, Jim, this is what's happening. And, putting ego aside, and that was going to be my next point. But putting ego aside, I don't know what to do. Have you seen this problem before? And chances are, and what I came to understand is that you had. Not only once or twice, you had seen it a lot because it was sort of common to the industry. And it might have been my own inexperience that led me to that roadblock and setback. And being able to speak with you allowed me to make the right choices to get past that faster. We got about 4 minutes left. I want to finish this up and we'll start with you, Brian. How impactful or how detrimental can ego be in overcoming roadblocks and setbacks? Do we have to put that aside? Ask for help, ask for guidance. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree that you have to put that aside. I really believe that you need to be humble. You need to be transparent. Doesn't mean that you need to be weak. It just means that you need to be humble. Hey, listen, you don't know everything. We're finite beings, and we have a limited frame of reference. But when I can say, hey, Lyndon, this is the way I'm seeing things. How are you seeing things? Then I expand that frame of reference. Then I have to actually humble myself and say, hey, listen, I really don't know everything. And one of the things that I have found that really has catapulted me in my growth is to be able to say I've done wrong. Hey, listen, I've absolutely botched this. I have messed up Jell-O. And I said that a lot. It's hard to mess up Jell-O. Add water and mix. I mean, that's it. But I can tell you that in my life and in my business, I've messed it up. So I've needed the people around me that have more wisdom or have a different perspective, different viewpoint. And then I have to be open to listen to that counsel.
Jim, what about you? Through your experiences in the years that you've been doing what you do, has ego ever gotten in somebody's way for them to be effective or timely in overcoming roadblocks and setbacks?
Certainly it can. I'm going to give a little different take on ego. Ego gets a bad rap sometimes, and certainly deservingly so in many cases. But, for a business owner, it's that ego that makes you think, hey, I can do this. I can do anything. I can accomplish this. I can do what somebody else can't do. I've got the idea. It's that ego that drives that forward. Now, on the other side of that, if we get too stubborn or, things like that, it can be very much a failing for us. So as long as we're channeling that in the right direction, I think ego can be a great thing if it's going in the right direction. But can it get in the way? A lot of times it does. You bet.
Well, that's a good point. All right. Well, we're just about out of time. What I want to do to close out today is I want to give each one of you, we'll start with you, Brian, the last word, last thoughts on roadblocks and setbacks, and then tell everybody a little bit about how to get in touch with you, what you do, who you're looking to work with. And then Jim, we'll go to you. Same thing. You give a little closing statement on roadblocks and setbacks, and then a little bit about you and fitness management and consulting. Brian, you're up.
So one of the things, I guess, the highlight of overcoming a roadblock and setback for me is to tap into that innovative, creative power that you have, because you have it. You have a unique fingerprint. You have a unique retinal scan and unique dental records. You have the ability to see things different. You have the ability to speak things clearly and articulate your vision, and you're able to, whatever you touch will have your impact on it. So tap into that creativity, tap into that innovative approach, and you will overcome those setbacks and roadblocks. So what I do in my business, I'm a real estate agent. So we help buyers and sellers. you can contact me on my Facebook page. You can reach out to me on my website. And we also work with real estate agents and in coaching and training and helping them overcome the setbacks and the roadblocks that are keeping them basically behind, and helping them propel them to get all their dreams accomplished and the results that they want to get.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, for being here. Jim, close us out with your final thought on setbacks and roadblocks.
Yeah, here's a message I would give to anybody right now as we're talking. You're a business owner. In my world, you might own a baseball facility, you might own a gym, a fitness center. You got some tough times right here. Here's the first thing I'd ask for you to do. Remember why you got into this, and remember why it's important. Because if you can really stay focused on that why, and it's easy to forget it sometimes, stay focused on why this is important. You do that, that alone can make a gigantic difference for you. So know what your why is, and if you have to, write it down the first thing every morning and write it down at the end of business every day. Don't let all the noise of the world distract you in understanding why this is important for you. And so my company's Fitness Management, and we work with gyms, fitness centers, health clubs nationwide. And if you're an existing gym owner, whether you're have to close, you're struggling, trying to improve it, or you're doing well and want to go to that next level, I can help you do it. If now's the right time to sell, or if even now's the right time to bow out gracefully, I can help you do it. Best way to reach me, you feel free to call, feel free to text 214-629-7223, or you can check me out at fmconsulting.net.
All right. Thank you, Jim. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today and tuning into all the shows that we have. The difference is really growing. I appreciate that. It's all because of the people that watch and support the show. It's because of our sponsors. We've got even more shows coming within the next couple of weeks. I'm pretty excited about that. So thank you all for tuning in today to Game Day with Coach Wilson, our first show. And we'll be back again next week at 1 o'clock on Wednesday.